Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sunday Wire. Welcome back. Welcome back. If you're watching us live, we're streaming out on X. We're streaming out on Facebook on our fan page there. Also YouTube and our corporate account at 21st Century Wire here on X, Twitter as well. Thank you for rejoining us. And we're going to go live. We're going to bring a couple of guests onto the stage to join us for this special New Year's edition. We're going to take a look back at 2023, some of the big moments, top stories. We'll reflect a little bit, and then we're going to look ahead to 2024, and we're going to see what's going on, what the next 12 months has to offer. I do not want to table any specific predictions this year because, as I said in the previous segment, we're streaming out on our audio at Alternate Current Radio, the first segment on our live broadcast there. As I said, it's been so crazy the last 3 months that I'm reticent to make any hard predictions other than general trends for the new year. So with that, I want to welcome onto the stage a couple of good friends and cohorts who's going to join us as well. Brian McLean, a.k.a. Hesher. You'll know him from The Boiler Room on ACR on the Alternate Current Radio Network, and also Basil Valentine, our roving correspondent for culture, sport, and everything under the sun as well. And you also know some of these chaps from TNT Network too. Firstly, Hesher, how you doing? Happy New Year's Eve. Hope you're doing good.
Yeah, doing good. Happy New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's to everybody out there on the other side of the international date line, and we'll join you shortly and kick off 2024.
That's right. For everybody down under, it's already New Year's Day. It's already the 1st. They're ahead of us. We're still lagging behind. So back to the future in the West. And Basil Valentine is joining us from the posh confines of the Summer Palace in Brighton. Basil, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Patrick. Good to be with you. And yes, that is indeed the former King George IV's Summer Palace behind me, the famous Royal Pavilion. I'm not on the inside, I'm afraid to say, but I can tell you that we've got proper winter weather down here. Howling gales. I don't know if the microphone's picking it up. We've got real sort of film soundtrack weather, you know, where you hear the wind whistling outside and the rain beating against the windows.
Hesher, how's things down in the state of Texas? It wasn't so long ago that you guys all nearly froze to death.
Yeah.
And your power was out, and we're wondering if you and everybody else in Central Texas was going to actually survive. Have we improved since those days? Has your Governor Abbott sorted out the issues?
I do not know. I do not know if he's sorted out those issues. We shall see if we have another hard freeze come through, multi-day, hard freeze. That was absolutely insane. I mean, harrowing, truly. I believe over 100 people passed away during that period of no power, which is very little talked about, actually. Yeah, that was nuts. Absolutely nuts. Most people don't. They've set these suburbs up here in Texas so quickly. And they set them up in modern building styles. So it's like, whatever the highest return on investment is. So there's unless someone custom has a fireplace built, most houses, the suburban houses here in Texas, they don't have fireplaces. So, maybe some people upgraded to generators and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people have done the work they need to do, and they're hoping that the state government has done what they need to do. But really the big problem with that one was policy, not so much our grid. Our grid was fine. It was just the policy about how much they could use it, and they shut it down.
Yeah, green energy policies, I think, also fed into that problem.
Yeah.
Frozen windmills, solar panels with snow over them don't tend to work very well during the winter. But yeah, that's another conversation we can have. Looking forward to 2024. And look, before we get going, I also wanted to tell everybody that we just found out this morning that a great journalist has passed away. John Pilger, the iconic filmmaker, award-winning journalist, has passed away at the age of 84 this morning. I believe his family posted a message on his X Twitter account, and also up his website, johnpilger.com. John Pilger is Australian. He was based in Britain for most of his career. I mean, what an unbelievable career. And as I remarked earlier this morning, his whole work, his whole volume of journalism, documentary films, has been basically preserved by the British Library. There are not very many journalists in modern history, in the modern era, who can boast about that. And that's what they've done. That's how important his work has been. He's very, very much challenging the establishment, very much a rebel in that sense, standing up for the underdog, for the oppressed. His work, unbelievable. I mean, Basil, remember the days when the mainstream had some content by journalists like Pilger, Carlton TV. They gave him, a wide berth to do what he wanted to do. And why is that? Why was that allowed back then, Basil, as opposed to today, where that's just basically complete? That type of journalism is forbidden in mainstream media, and government won't support it either. What changed? And why is Pilger
9/11.
9/11?
9/11 changed. That's what changed. And suddenly any form of dissidence became associated with extremism, which lives next door to terrorism and all the rest of it. So, we had a tremendous narrowing of the acceptable opinion corridor after September the 11th, 2001. Yeah, ITV, Independent Television One, the most watched station in Britain throughout the last quarter of the 20th century, regularly allowed John Pilger to make whatever kind of film he wanted, so it seemed, expressing himself fully on a range of controversial subjects. He made his name, of course, reporting from the Vietnam War, but went on to champion the underdog and to attack governments for their malfeasance. But all that changed this century when suddenly he found himself persona non grata, because you were not allowed to ask too many difficult questions about the forever wars after 9/11, let alone the events of that dreadful day itself.
So he was there for Iraq, for the Iraq War, as you said. He cut his teeth on the Vietnam War. Basil, what was it about John Pilger is it because he had that little bit of Australian swagger, that relatability, but he had all that formal British media acumen? Like the combination of those two things, I think, made him like very credible, and he's a great storyteller as well. But he also had a geopolitical mind, and maybe that's what sets him apart, in my mind, anyway. What do you think, Basil?
Well, he used language very well, and he was able to cut through the BS and call things as he saw them. He's, to use the popular phrase, spoke truth to power and wasn't afraid to do so. But there was something about the way he positioned himself in the media that meant he was acceptable as an alternative voice in a way that literally hundreds of others have never been before or since. He was an absolutely unique voice, and although we hadn't heard as much from him in recent years, nevertheless, he's a great big loss. Remember, 20 years ago, he made the film Palestine is Still the Issue. And if ever there were some prophetic words, those are they.
Yeah, we're actually featuring that up at the Sunday screening. If you go to 21st Century Wire, our documentary film, which we screen an independent film or something that's challenging every week. This week we're featuring Palestine is Still the Issue, 2002, John Pilger, written and reported by John Pilger. Basil, that was Carlton Television, so that must have been made during the Second Intifada. And by the time they finished production on that, or just after the Second Intifada, and they finished production on that, it aired in 2002. It's a stunning piece of history. Like his work is living history, Basil. It is living history. So the body of work is amazing. Where would we be for our historical record without the work of John Pilger on so many subjects?
Yeah, it's not as if there was a sort of substitute. It's not as if the BBC had their equivalent. It was him or no one, and very often he, produced reports for mainstream corporate television, which one found really arresting. Wow, how is he able to get away with saying that on TV? But of course, as is always the case, the importance that these things have, the weight they carry. People talked about John Pilger's programs in the office the following day. Did you see that John Pilger film last night? Wasn't that extraordinary revelations and all that? But sure enough, within a few days, it's all quietly forgotten and memory hold. So I'm not in any way trying to diminish his work, far from it. But he was something of a voice in the wilderness for many years. Now, of course, we've got far more strident voices, even more aggressive since the internet came along. But he was a trailblazer. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll share some of my experiences with him, personal experiences, and the work that I thought was really poignant. But I want to go over to you, Hesher. What do you think about this latest news about John, his work in general, state of journalism then and now?
Well, state of journalism has certainly changed. I think a lot of people are confused about what it actually means to be a journalist these days. Unfortunately, you would think that the American and the Western public at this point would realize, that what we have in the mass media cartel is a mockingbird media. We all know this very well. And people still think if they see the talking head in the suit on the television that, they are a journalist. It's like that's all they need to qualify, because most people, they aren't interested in the geopolitics. They aren't interested in the things that aren't being reported. And they aren't interested in understanding that they're being given war propaganda, social engineering propaganda, anti-American propaganda, just pro-death propaganda, trying to get people to uptake various emergency juices into their veins and such. And, the passing of John Pilger made me look back, and I wanted to find a quote from him. I believe this is his words. It's on his website, and note the date. It's a short one. I'm going to read it. It's pretty short, but note the date. This was put out on 12 March of 2020. All right. He said, "A pandemic has been declared, but not for the 24,600 who die every day from unnecessary starvation, and not for the 3,000 children who die every day from preventable malaria, and not for the 10,000 people who die every day because they are denied publicly funded health care, and not for the hundreds of Venezuelans and Iranians who die every day because America's blockade denies them life-saving medicines, and not for the hundreds of mostly children bombed or starved to death every day in Yemen, a war supplied and kept going profitably by America and Britain. Before you panic, consider them."
Wow.
Tremendous. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, think about
I'm
how
glad
that
you read
wraps
that.
into what's happening right now. Like, I was trying to find something that he wrote that I wanted to go back to his take on the COVIDian experience, and that date. I mean, that's like day one. That's like, marker zero pretty much right there from when all the shutdowns started and everything.
Mm.
And just look at like what's happening right now, and how what he said encapsulates the mindset that one needs to have, the longer term mindset, because as you said the other day, Patrick, history didn't start on October 7th.
Yeah, well, yeah, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict certainly didn't, but a lot of people believe that or feel that it did. They believe it or not, and it's because of journalists, because of people who've laid down the groundwork for understanding some of these incidents and these historic stories, like John Pilger, that we're able to go back and piece together how we got here. That's why it's so important. And John Pilger was on the front line of the battle for free press. So more than any other journalist, I would say high profile journalist, he from day one was right there at the front defending Julian Assange. Without a doubt. And so he put himself out there, and the saddest part for me was that not many other journalists, especially all these sort of ne'er-do-wells at the Guardian and careerists, saw that, took the cue from him, saying, guys, this is one of our colleagues who's being imprisoned here for doing journalism and being persecuted. And of course, Pilger knew how important Julian Assange and WikiLeaks were to the free press in Britain, in the US, and internationally. And he didn't miss any opportunity to be there. The first time I met him in person was at one of Julian Assange's hearings at Westminster Magistrates Court. This was, I think, in probably 2019, something like that. And he was very gracious. He was there in the gallery. He was there to show his support. And the numbers were, building at that point in support for Assange, and that case in London. But we had him and I had some email correspondences over the recent years, and also he would send me articles that he wanted to get boosted, that he wrote, and I very gladly published anything that he sent to 21st Century Wire. It's an honor to be able to republish his work on our website, and he's always been very gracious. He's also offered his opinions on a lot of things. Yeah, you're right, Hesher. He weighed in with a bigger view of the pandemic than a lot of his journalistic colleagues did. That's the thing about John Pilger that makes him special, is that, and I said this on my comment I gave on X Twitter today, was that not only would he gather the facts on the ground and the truth and everything, and bring people in with his great storytelling ability, but he would then couch it in a bigger geopolitical context. And so he understood, for instance, that the nuclear encirclement of the Pacific Ocean of China, what that potentially meant going forward when he did The Coming War with China. I mean, I think he did that documentary, or that piece of work, the literature, the film. I think that goes back to 2010, and in that early period there, and showed what was going on. He was too far ahead of the curve for the rest of the mainstream media, just about right, but even too far for a lot of the independent media. His vision on Asia and the Asia Pacific as a coming theater for World War III is unparalleled. And that work on itself, if you could pick one work that is just supremely important for humanity, it's that piece of work by John Pilger. So what can we say? I mean, just that, and educating people about what's going on in the dark corners, recesses of the geopolitical battlefields in Southeast Asia, in South America, in the Middle East, in the archipelagos around Indonesia, Borneo, and all these other places. So his work is unbelievable. And, he weighed in a very big way on the Syrian conflict, very big way. He made some statements that were absolutely pivotal. He did some great work with Afshin Rattanzi, who used to report for RT, and exposing the white helmets, the chemical, the sort of pseudo fake chemical weapons attacks that were staged by all these rogue actors working for their Western sponsors. I mean, John Pilger was there to comment on, to expose, to show the truth in a way that was very unpopular with his previous establishment colleagues. Basil, so, this was a guy who was not afraid to basically step out.
No, I mean, the hallmark really was his fearlessness, wasn't it? There was nobody that was too big as far as he was concerned to be the target for accurate criticism. He didn't tend to head off into the realms of speculation or personal attack, for that matter. He was very much always focused on what governments were doing and the harm that governments were doing to ordinary people around the world, if you like, in real time, in the real world. So not sort of, it wasn't a conspiracy theorist in the slightest. He was interested in reporting what's actually going on and how it's impacting people, unfortunately, mostly negatively.
Yeah, and you had those battlegrounds, East Timor. You have all these various CIA wars going on, Indonesia. So Southeast Asia was just rife with all sorts of this stuff. He was one of the people. He was there to document it and to show what was really going on. And so, from that point of view, amazing, a valuable asset to the global media for so many decades. And Hesher, he was very outspoken about a lot of things. I even think at one point he was one of the early people who was criticizing Obama, that came in on this kind of, magic carpet of peace, and I'm going to bring the troops home. And of course, very quickly after 2008 election, we realized that none of that's going to happen. So Pilger was one of the first, I think, also mainstream media people to be very critical of Obama's foreign policy and in questioning who he was, really, the myth versus the reality. That's just one example of how sort of attuned he was to what was going on. But your final thoughts on this great loss for journalism?
It is a big loss, and I would say, I may sound critical of people that are geopolitically illiterate and stuff like that, or seduced by that mass media cartel's narratives. But I was that way too at one point. I was unfortunately not paying attention probably during the bulk of his work. So it is a terrible loss. I became aware of him, I don't know, back around the time we met, 10, 11, 12 years ago, whatever it's been now. My goodness. Happy New Year. But when I think, I guess I would wrap by just another thing that he wrote, because this is about journalism, and he wrote this in regards to, or actually, this was actually spoken in an interview. It's transcribed here about Assange, and what Pilger said is, "What is at stake for the rest of us has long been at stake: freedom to call authority to account, freedom to challenge, to call out hypocrisy, and to dissent. The difference today is that the world's imperial power, the United States, has never been as unsure of its metastic authority as it is today. Like a flailing rogue, it is spinning us towards a world war if we allow it. Little of this menace is reflected in the media. WikiLeaks, on the other hand, has allowed us to glimpse a rampant imperial march through whole societies. Think of the carnage in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Yemen, to name a few. The dispossession of 37 million people and the deaths of 12 million men, women, and children in the war on terror. Most of it behind a facade of deception."
If I could just finally add, John was able to get through to what I've heard called in the last few days low information people. We've been hearing about how low information people have shifted their views on Israel-Palestine as a result of October the 7th and its aftermath, and subsequently educating themselves. And partly because John Pilger was given such a wonderful platform by ITV on and off for so many years, he was able to get through to people who otherwise didn't pay any attention to geopolitics, and made quite a considerable difference in that regard. So, he was able to influence, what one might call the low information people more than any other single journalist, certainly in the UK sphere, which is where he operated most of his career.
And it's funny, like I would class him as a kind of anti-imperialist journalist. but that wasn't a term that was ascribed to somebody like him back then, because what he was doing was just hard reporting at the time. But now, in the kind of more partisan interpretation of where everybody fits in the little, mosaic of politics today, he'd be classed as anti-imperialist, sure, of course, but there were, what he was doing in terms of that on the ground hard reporting in some of these war zones, giving it his kind of unique interpretation, which I think was more realistic. Definitely on the side of whoever, he's definitely a man of the underdog, Basil, but that wasn't necessarily, he wasn't known as an anti-imperialist journalist during his heyday.
No, he was just an investigative journalist.
Exactly.
And what he uncovered and what he reported on did not reflect well on empire.
Yeah, and it's funny, that's when this sort of military industrial complex was kind of the modern military industrial complex really coming into its own, as his career was building up through the 1970s, into the 80s, into the 90s, the unipolar moment, Iraq 1 and 2, Yugoslavia, and now we're into the 2000s. And
yeah, I think he was able to make as much noise as he was because of the sheer strength of his personality and the passion with which he, held the subjects that he covered, such that people kind of got out of his way. It's like, I'm John Pilger and this is important and I have right on my side and you must listen to this. So even, hard-boiled television executives went, I think perhaps this chap's right. I think, I think he's onto something here. So, he was able to achieve the status and the reach that he did by dint of the sheer force of his personality and his passion.
And so you had a little bit of experience in that television world, Basil. So you know the type of working environment that he'd be working. That's interesting. You say that, Basil, that through the sheer force of his own personality, that he held quite a lot. He was he was one of the rock stars they had on their lineup.
Yes, and you couldn't fault him for his accuracy. You see, hence he gained a lot of respect because you couldn't say, he was exaggerating, he was lying, he was speculating, any of those things at all. He was simply accurate, and that garnered him an enormous amount of respect and meant that he was able to carry on broadcasting, whereas others might have been chucked overboard for, hyperbole and being obviously promoting one particular viewpoint, whereas John just called it as he saw it.
And also, it reflected a slightly more plurality in terms of what we had in terms of, in legislature, in foreign policy, in press. Right, there was a bit more, I think, choice.
Well, he worked for ITV, as you said, who also at that time had the World in Action documentary series, which regularly went after the British government, the famous Gibraltar shootings episode, but myriad others where ITV in particular had something of a license to be dissident and to go after government in quite important ways. We don't have that anymore.
So I just want to remind people, Palestine is Still the Issue, 2002 documentary film, written, reported by John Pilger. That's up at 21stcenturywire.com. We'll post that on our social media in just a minute or two. But go and watch that film if you can today. If you want to, set aside 52 minutes today and watch this film by John Pilger, definitely in his absolute prime. And a beautiful piece of filmmaking, and really chronicling the history, showing how far back this issue goes, how long this problem has persisted, how chronic the situation in Gaza, for instance, in the occupied territories has been. Thanks to John Pilger, we know this, and we can understand something from those beautiful interviews that he's done, difficult interviews from both sides of the conflict. So what else can we say? That this is a great journalist. This is a great filmmaker. This is a great person, and his work has even been. It's just so unstoppable that even the British establishment had to preserve his archive of work at the British Library. So it's there for anybody that wants to visit. I think you can go and always see the work of John Pilger as long as the British Library is in existence, which I think will be in perpetuity probably. But yeah, so go to 21 Wire and check that out. Now, thanks guys for your comments on that, Basil and Hesher. I appreciate it. Appreciate the reflections. And
84 is a good knock. That's what you get.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think so. Well, his career speaks for itself. His work speaks for itself. So yeah. Sad for a lot of people. He wasn't that vocal, or he made some comments on after October 7th on the Palestinian issue, and I'm sure probably wasn't in great health in the last 3 months, so it's why he wasn't at the forefront of that debate. But Basil, it's regrettable that he wasn't there in a more prominent way, I think, in that conversation, Basil. But that's just unfortunately the way it went. So
Yes.
I'll go to you first, Basil. On looking back, let's look back at 2023. So we got New Year's Eve coming up. If you're in Europe, in the US, not long now for you in Europe. Big stories big moments for 2023. You can state the obvious, or you can state something else in addition, Basil. What do you think? How are you looking at
Well,
these 12 months?
It was the year, politics was upended, really, wasn't it? It was the year the COVID narrative completely imploded. Nobody's interested in that anymore. Some doom mongers saying that there'll be another pandemic. Oh, you never know what kind of stunt they might try and pull. But I think that's pretty much run its course. In the ordinary run of events, the Ukraine war would run its course. But we've got worrying noises coming, particularly from European leaders and also from across the Atlantic, saying, no, we must keep this going. I'm not quite sure who's going to fight it. They've used up all the Ukrainians. I think the average age of the fighting force now is about my age. Most of them are dead. So all this paranoia about, unfortunately, I'm off. I'm not allowed to post on Twitter for another 6 days on the X platform because it didn't like what I said to Mike Pompeo.
Yeah, that's called, I think, what's the term for that, Hesher? Is it shit posting?
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah. There's ways that you could articulate that same point, Basil, that I would advise you to use another choice of words that maybe are slightly more elegant and reflect your character more accurately.
I get sometimes very passionate on X, Patrick.
I know. I know you do.
And I haven't had a problem so far. And I was surprised it was a full week's ban from posting.
Yep.
But Pompeo was indulging in the worst kind of victim blaming, which I've noticed is a tendency around particularly the conflict in Gaza. They've brought it all on themselves and it's their fault. And the only people responsible for all the deaths and mutilations in Gaza is Hamas. So I said, okay, Mike, well, in that case, if I come round and do unpleasant things to you, it's your fault because you're such a ... But the language I used was rather fruitier than that. But that's what they're effectively saying, that the victim is to blame. The classic bullying tactics, particularly when the victim has the temerity to retaliate against the bully, which obviously is what Hamas did. When the victim strikes back against the bully, then that's the bully's opportunity not only to pummel the victim harder than ever, but also to blame the victim because they had the audacity to fight back in some modest way. So I find that particularly disgraceful, particularly abhorrent. So I went after Mike Pompeo, and unfortunately,
Well, nobody's going to accuse you of punching downwards there, Basil. So
no, that's right.
well,
Well, he's one of the worst, most oafish characters. I mean, we've seen the sort of re-emergence in 2023, if it ever went away, of the most ghoulish. Well, evil is the only way to describe it, writ large, in the shape, obviously, of the Israeli regime and its cohorts in the so-called West, without which it would not be able to carry on this slaughter. So, you know, the likes of the spectacle, I'm afraid to say what I'll remember about 2023, perhaps more than anything else, was the abhorrent spectacle of Blinken, Biden, von der Leyen, Sunak, Schultz, all of them flying to Tel Aviv, draping themselves in the Israeli flag and encouraging what I'm pleased now to say, is quite accurately being described by the South Africans as a genocide. Now, as you know, Patrick, this has all sorts of implications for these so-called world leaders, because if they are guilty of complicity in genocide, then they too are going to end up before the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, which is the court of the United Nations, isn't it? It's not the ICC, the International Criminal Court, which is a different body altogether, the one at The
that's
Hague.
right. Yeah, that's
The ICJ
that's the
is the
World Court.
Supreme Court of the United Nations.
It's mandated not only by international law, but also by the individual countries that ratified the Genocide Convention as part of their own constitutional law, which is the case in the U.S.,
Right.
as it is in all the European countries. So obviously our government in the U.S. has been violating their own laws by sending JDAM bombs and ammunitions to Israel while they're using them to indiscriminately target civilians. They can say all they want about going for Hamas, but the numbers are just beyond the pale. And so it's beyond a joke, this defense that we're just defending ourselves and we're only targeting Hamas. I mean, the denials are just shameless
Yes.
to a degree that I don't think anyone could possibly imagine is humanly possible in full broad daylight of what's gone on, but yet they're still trying it. So it is quite an extraordinary, bizarre Twilight Zone type situation that we're seeing here. So the arc of justice is just a bit slow here, getting back to this. But as I said, Basil, and I'll go to Hesher to get his comment on this, is it provides a legal platform for people to do other things. There can be arrest warrants, there can be indictments filed as well on anybody in the Israeli military, anybody in the U.S. that's been aiding and abetting this and providing material support, even up to the defense contractors themselves. I mean, remember the Nuremberg trial, guys. I mean, if you're saying you're just following orders or, you know, just doing your business, your daily business, that wasn't like a defense during those hearings. So, and there's no statute of limitations for this. So Hesher, what do you think about this latest invocation of the Genocide Convention by South Africa? I think it's probably appropriate that it was South Africa of all countries to file this. It does help to frame this a little bit politically. I'm happy to see an African country stepping up like this, a BRICS country. So this, for me, this is also signals other things too, like the multipolar world kind of showing its face a little bit. Hesher, what do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the NATO countries, their reputation is in the tank globally right now, you know, and that's no fault to, you know, our American soldiers here. It's the leadership. It is an absolute and utter joke at this point. I think, you know, anyone who's paying attention and wondering globally why we have so much war has got their eye squarely on the United States and the British government. I mean, those are the worst perpetrators of all this stuff. I mean, color revolutions. Look at the history of color revolutions. Look, just it's littered with it. Every time we've got atrocity happening and war happening in an area of NATO interest, or intelligence agency interests, or military industrial complex interests, political interests, boom, there we are. There we are. Just causing problems, creating propaganda, creating enemies, funding terrorists in some cases. And this is all just open source. This is just open. You can read books about this. You can watch documentaries about this. You can read it from the source. The intelligence companies have released all kinds of this stuff. You can go straight to their website and read some of it in many cases. Whistleblowers, the body of work of Sunday Wire from the 3-4 years of focusing on Syria. I mean, so yeah, it's a really bad look, and it's and the media is kind of the culture jammers have kind of screwed themselves up a little bit here too, because we've spent the last 20 years or so, at least 10 in major ways, training everybody in this country, particularly the youth, to think that to live in this woke sort of identity politic where it's like the victim is always the thing on their mind. Are you victimizing me? Are you victimizing that person? Are you victimizing this class? Are you the oppressor? You know what I mean? So, and they tried to use that to get us all against each other here, and that worked pretty well. But also, when now you want to roll this out, right? And you've got just from a very high level, you've got people talking about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, right? And it's like every young person in this country, and sorry for you adults that are infected by this woke brainworm also, like they're looking for the underdog now. Everybody's looking for the underdog so they can go victim, victim, oppressor, oppressor. And as Basil's pointing out, I think this is kind of flipped now for some people. And it's like the American public doesn't know how to rectify that, because the identity politics have gotten so bad if you're in the power politic mindset that, and even if you're not, a lot of times it's just culture jammed in, via media for people that think they're apolitical. They don't really know it, but their worldview is very much a progressively influenced worldview. So I really don't know where this is going to head. I feel like some people are doubling down in many ways. And as you point out, Basil, many people are sort of maybe waking up. And then there's this other strange, muddy, gray area class of people that are simply just looking for the victim and the oppressor. And I think that's causing some ricochet to, those that want to see this war fostered.
Yeah, I think I'll just I think on that front, I mean, I know you're talking more from a domestic political setting in the United States, and that sort of wokery, that kind of out of control woke conversation, it just has reached levels of a ridiculousness that are, just beyond anything anybody has seen previously, to the point where it almost neutralizes itself because it just becomes such a folly. But then, but this is interesting, because when I first, the Palestinian issue, which was not a big issue, it wasn't at the forefront of everybody's mind. All of a sudden, it's thrust into the global conversation after October 7th, and that is a genuine underdog story. That is a genuine victim story. And so, in that sense, the better angels of the Gen Z woke population recognize straight away what it is. That's a real issue. Those are real victims. That's a real genocide. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've gotten in some arguments as well with what we might class as, white nationalists on social media that are they're calling out white genocide in America. And they're also sympathetic towards the Palestinian position. I had this argument with one person. I said, look, look, the Palestinians are actually facing a genocide. Those are bombs coming down. Their whole family's wiped out. The family tree's gone. The family tree is gone in the last 10 weeks. And you're sitting pretty in wherever you are in the United States. And I'm here in the United States looking around, and yeah, there's no white genocide going on. So it does devalue the term, I think. So that's on the
Yeah,
right
I mean,
side of
the white nationalists
conversation.
talking about white genocide in America are talking about the gradual reduction in the total percentage of the population of Northern Europeans, which was sort of 95% or something, and only a few years ago, and will be less than half. It's not as if people are going around killing them, but there's a lot of
Genocide means someone's actually killing you. But
yeah,
if you look at the birth rates, look at the demographics, it's not, if it's genocide, they're doing it to themselves. Okay.
yeah,
So it doesn't really, I think
completely different.
the term, it just is, it
Yes,
loses
of
its
course,
meaning. And
of
in the
course.
context of what's happening in the Middle East, I think it's an
I
inappropriate
think it's unhelpful.
term.
Yeah,
It's unhelpful to use. But to Hesher's point, it's interesting, Hesher. Yeah. So when I would go to international events in the 90s, the Palestinians would be there next to the South Africans in the panels. So it was always seen as this liberation struggle. So it was a liberation struggle, a classic liberation struggle, very much a classic left-wing a liberation kind of. It would relate to the old left, basically the old left, as it were, the anti-imperialist left, the anti-war movements, and all that sort of stuff, all in the same sort of cadre, right? And so today, I'm talking to my friend, and he's talking about his two teenage kids, and he asked them, dude, does anybody at school support Israel? And they said no. They said they don't know anybody that supports Israel. Now that's a big change for, if that's Gen Z coming through the ranks. I'm talking 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. That's a big difference, because when we were in public school, U.S. public schools, I went through that system. I went through state. When we say public in America, Basil, we mean actual publicly funded
yes, I know what you mean.
schools. I know in Britain there's this strange interpretation of that term that's inverted, that nobody understands but the British. Like David Cameron went to a public school, but and Boris,
State schools. You mean state schools?
So I went to state education, and it was very heavily focused on Israel. From I would think my earliest living
still
memory
is. I think there's still compulsory
it
Holocaust.
would have been 10 years old. 10 years old would be the earliest I could remember. The Israel issue was pushed very hard on us from music to social studies, history, whatever. It was, and then in junior high they really ramped it up heavily with Anne Frank's diary, the Holocaust education, and we even had to learn the kibbutz songs in choir.
Good God.
In elementary school. So we had to learn all the Jewish kibbutz songs. That was in a U.S. state school. And it was just seen as normal. So we're naturally, you developed a very affinity towards all things Israeli through the state education system. I don't know if that's the same way today as it was back in the 70s and 80s, but maybe it's changed
more so
today. But I think now, looking at the attitudes of Gen Zers, the youth now, I think maybe they haven't been as propagandized because they've been putting that other stuff through the pipeline. Hesher, what do you think? There's a whole bunch of other stuff they've been fed that we weren't fed.
Yeah.
And maybe that pushed out the Israeli education curriculum a little bit to where they're changing things. So in that sense, both Basil and Hesher, get your comment on this, that although the Black Lives Matter thing is, I think, completely weaponized identity politics, okay, but there is a Venn diagram overlap with the Palestinian issue in the minds of Gen Z. So it's just a political reality. Your general comments on this, because I think it's interesting to step back and just observe how these things are coalescing and moving and shifting.
Yeah, I mean, the activist class have got behind Palestine in a way that nobody could have foreseen 6 months ago, including Greta Thunberg. of all people, but large swathes, particularly of young Jewish Americans, if not now, was a fringe group now holding huge demonstrations. There was another one last week at the big railway station, wasn't there? Hundreds of people. So both Jewish and non-Jewish activists, climate activists, etc., have got very fully behind the Palestinian cause, and that isn't going to change, because part of that has been a process of self-education over the course of the last 3 months. An awful lot of people who were previously low information, I don't know too much about that, it's a long way away, doesn't concern me, aren't the Israelis the good guys, have decided, well, perhaps we ought to have a better look at this. I mean, TikTok and X are both full of videos of people going, I can't believe I didn't know any of this stuff.
Exactly. So
I've done my research.
This is self-education, what you said, Basil. That's important.
Huge
To me,
amount of
it's refreshing to hear people talking facts and perspective, as opposed to waving the Ukrainian flag and shouting nationalist slogans and, worshiping Zelensky with having absolutely zero interest or knowledge into all the preceding events that preceded the current phase of the Ukraine conflict.
So absolutely. So whatever happens, that's changed fundamentally, and it's not going to change back. Those people are not going to suddenly wake up one morning and think, oh, actually, I've had a Damascene moment and I realize now Israel is the victim, just as I've been propagandized and told it was for the last 25 years. No, that ain't happening. In the hearts and minds of the vast majority of people worldwide under the age of 35 or 40, including in the US, and people over that age in the global south and the developing world and all the rest of it, with the possible exception of India because of their own Hindu nationalist affinity with Israel, it's over. Israel will forever be a pariah. It's not coming back from that. Or worse than a pariah, a terrorist state, a criminal enterprise, a genocidal entity. Where the genocide charges are concerned, unfortunately, I don't expect to see, anyone appearing before that court anytime soon, if ever. Saw one Israeli spokesperson on X inevitably dismissed the lawsuit as a blood libel.
I saw that,
which of course references the medieval accusation that Jews were sacrificing Christians in all kinds of unholy ways. But how can it be a libel if 10,000 children have been killed and a further 6,000 have had at least one limb amputated, of whom 1,000 have had those limbs amputated without anesthetic? And I just discovered yesterday that Israel is no longer permitting anesthetics to be included amongst the aid trucks coming through. No anesthetics permitted.
That's one of many examples. That's
exactly. So how dare they talk about libel?
Well,
dredge up some historic nonsense.
No, actually, the real blood libel is all of the fake stories that came out right at the beginning of 40 beheaded babies, and Hamas was
baked in ovens,
mass rape, and all this other stuff. Okay, that blood libel, which was disseminated by the Israeli government first through its media outlets, then repeated throughout and cascade through all of the Western mainstream media, this provided the vengeance motive for soldiers in the IDF, people doing airstrikes. They're thinking to themselves, well, let's just not hold back. And that's what the defense minister said, Gallant. No holds barred, basically. So it was based on that actual blood libel. So again, accusing others of what you yourselves have already done.
Yes, good point.
It's unbelievable. So Hesher, your comments on...
Well, I just wanted to make one final comment before
go ahead,
we may end up digressing, which is that while I don't expect anyone to appear before the ICJ, and the Israelis are already dismissing the whole thing, this is extremely embarrassing for Western leaders. This means that, you know, the next big protests in London on January the 13th, the charge of genocide can be leveled against Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister, who only a couple of months ago went to Israel and said, we want you to win, you know. Now, you and I, Patrick, have been talking about genocide for several weeks, many weeks. Now, finally, it's very much in the mainstream. I've noticed it's already being downplayed by Western media. They haven't really latched onto it. Of course not, you know. But nevertheless, it means that we're not simply outliers when we accuse von der Leyen, Sunak, Biden, Lloyd Austin, and the rest of the ghouls of being complicit in genocide.
So, Hesher, you're free to comment on anything Basil said, but I also want to get your comment on. Yes, I accept that there is of course, a degree of astroturfing and political opportunism of a lot of left-wing progressive activist groups. Certainly, you see they want to have their banners alongside the Palestinian issue because that's the hot thing right now. And that's where the kids are. That's where the youth energy is. That's where the numbers on the street are. So I do grant that is a reality just in general. But what do you think this means? Do you think there's a shift? Do you think there's a potential shift? I know there's not a shift in Washington at the moment, not at the Congress Senate level, but below that in American society, what do you think? What just your objective observations of the last 10 weeks?
There's definitely that opportunity there. And I've noticed a lot of people that were parroting the mainstream, you know, Israeli intelligence and Pentagon talking points have sort of like Ukraine gotten a lot quieter than they used to be. You know, there's a lot of the saber rattling has kind of been muffled, and I don't think it's just the holidays that's doing that, you know. And I mean, if we just pause for a moment on Israel and look at Ukraine, it's like, what happened there? I mean, my goodness, this is over 500,000 people dead. They're now got women out there in brigades that have been conscripted. The money's stopped flowing, and if you watch the violence on the Telegram channels, it is profound. It is absolutely profound, and it's like many Americans at this point, and I'm talking to you conservatives too, you mainstream conservatives, like it took a while, but you finally got there, and you know now you're upset about the money factor, right? You're upset, oh, our money's all going here, this has failed, but you're not willing to say, wait, I put that flag up on my thing and I supported this hundreds of billions of dollars and death machines going there. And now there's over 600,000 people dead and they're losing. Okay. So you might want to take pause and think about what you're pushing for in Israel with regards to Palestine. And on that, I would just like to kind of shift gears and talk about the military aspect of it. I've been watching you know, all the channels I can on this and gathering all the information I can. And there's a guy named Greg. Shout out to him. I don't have his last name in front of me. Sorry, Greg, but he's on Instagram and Telegram and Twitter, and he's former special forces. And so, you know, he's fought in the Middle East before. And he was going through a list of killed in action Israeli soldiers. And he's pointing out some very interesting things militarily. I'm sure Patrick and Basil, you guys have probably come across this in your discussions and research too. But if you look at the list of killed in action on the Israeli side, you're seeing majors, sergeants, things like this that are, you know, 19, 20, 21. You know what I mean? Like their officer corps is woefully inexperienced, woefully young. They are taking big losses. And when you see the rank of some of the people that are being taken out, you got to look back to perhaps when Russia was defending itself in World War II, one of their sniper tactics and battle tactics was to target these senior officers. So, you know, your majors, your sergeants, that kind of thing, lieutenants getting sniped and leaving, you know, the rest of, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And it just demoralizes the military force. So, you know, and Greg and a number of other people that I've been following are doing really good analysis on the military side. And much like Ukraine, we're being told it's awesome. And, you know, you go to the Israeli, what's their propaganda unit? Is that the Hasbara? Is that what that is, Patrick?
Hasbara, yeah, unofficially, yeah, it's called the
Yeah.
Hasbara, yeah.
So you got all these Hasbara accounts out there, right? Like military hotties, like dancing, you know, and all this stupid stuff. I mean, it's very like kind of reminds me of some of the stuff we saw in 2020 with the nurses. But it's an insane propaganda program that they're running, and that's all it is, because it doesn't look good for them militarily. So my concern, and I think a lot of people's concern, is that the only way out of this militarily, seeing as they're getting bucket loads and buttloads of JDAMs and other indiscriminate weapons from the United States and Britain, is that, and it's not working, is that they're going to push for, like, what do they want after Gaza, right? Are they going to just slam through Gaza, and then what? What happens next? Is that the end for Israel and Bibi's plans? Or I don't think they can even do that. I don't think they can slam through Gaza. So the concern for a lot of people, I think, is that there's going to be a catalyzing and polarizing event here in the United States and in Europe and in Turkey and in Yemen. I don't know, maybe all over the place. I mean, Iraq is already going off. We've got major problems in Iraq. Syria still being occupied, problems there. So the concern, I think, is that what we're talking about, this sort of you know, slow awakening of the public to the reality of what's going on, might get disrupted by events that could lead to the big event that we don't want to have, which is a multipolar world war sort of, you know, multinational conflict. And I think that's what they would have to use. Like if I were the, you know, the evil puppet master and I wanted to make sure that this didn't end in failure, what else would the plan be other than bring everyone else in, call it a world war? That washes away all concepts of genocide. You know, they can take care of, do whatever they want to do to America, do whatever they want to do to Europe, and then the Great Reset marches on.
Yeah, buried under another heap of ash, basically. So, look, the United States just bombed a bunch of boats by what they call the Houthis. This is a Yemeni Ansar Allah. A lot of people say that's the legitimate government of Yemen. Of course, Washington doesn't. They have their own Juan Guaido character named Mansour al-Hadi that they believe is the president, and that's why they waged that war with Saudi Arabia from March 2015, begun under Obama, a long, dirty war against Yemen. So, like, the U.S. just declared war on Yemen effectively today, this morning. So that's already that's one of those things that you're mentioning there, Hesher, is a potential front opening up. I think China or some kind of Taiwan incident would be the ultimate. That would just suck all the oxygen out of everything in the Middle East, and it would really probably give the Israelis a free hand to do whatever they want out of the public spotlight. That's the fear. But then there would be retaliation for that from Hezbollah for certain, and I'm sure the Yemenis would ramp up their efforts as well. So yeah, so I guess we're kind of in a way segueing, looking ahead to 2024 there, Hesher. You've already done it. You've already knocked the wall out there. We're in the room. So we're into 2024. So Hesher's already sort of laid down a little bit. He's got his machete. He's hacked away a path for us into 2024. Basil, 2024. What are you looking at? Any trends, any predictions, observations?
Well, all the psychics are saying it's going to be a very turbulent year and that things might get worse before they get better. And, you know, certainly if we see a continuation of 2023, the trajectory we're on isn't very promising at all, is it? You know, we can hope that the war in Ukraine peters out, comes to an end. Everybody just simply fatigued and fed up to the extent that they don't want to carry on. the Israelis are going to push for the complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza. That much is obvious. So, what pushback against that is there going to be from Europe and the United States? And are we going to have first of all, global financial collapse? Some people are saying coming for February. And also the major cyber attack. It may be that the sort of doomsday scenario Hesher was referencing comes in the form of cyber outages, which are, according to people like Hillary Clinton, acts of war. So, the Russians going to be blamed for taking down the internet across
or the Iranians. Yeah.
Or the Iranians. Yes, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of saber rattling going on there, isn't there? So, we hope for a peaceful world in 2024. What I would say is we have to not only maintain that vision of peace, but keep talking, keep campaigning, keep demonstrating, make our voices heard. It does make a difference. And it also means that we stay energized and positive ourselves. It's all too easy to be defeatist regarding events on the global stage, and then that can lead to one being sort of defeatist in one's own life and basically kind of giving up. And quite a lot of people, unfortunately, do feel overwhelmed by current events. But we all knew, at the risk of getting too esoteric, Patrick, we all knew it was going to be like this before we were born. We signed up for this. And, it's time to step up to the plate.
Yes, indeed. So just a quick preview of our epic tome at 21st Century Wire, Top 10 Conspiracies of 2023. I will give a couple of honorable mentions there. We saw definitely that Titanic submarine incident that basically dominated the media for about a week or so. That was just the most bizarre thing in the world. That gets an honorable mention. The many announcements.
The imploding submarine. Yeah, that was
the imploding submarine. Insane. It didn't even have windows. It didn't even have windows. Why bother going down in a tank with no windows just to look at some video feed that the guy is driving the sub with a PlayStation console? I mean, what sort of billionaires or what are they thinking? More money than sense. Anyway, sad tragedy. Conspiracy. There were lots of conspiracies on the back end of that. Vladimir Putin, they announced that he died many times in 2023. And literally, I'm going back and reading mainstream media reports, like multiples. They haven't even bothered to clean that up. This is how shameless our media is. The ouster of Kevin McCarthy, that was an interesting one. Sam Bankman-Fried's trial. UFOs getting mainstream coverage, Basil. We talked about this last week. Like congressional hearings.
More of that. We'll see more of that.
But it was like, I look back at those hearings because I was doing a little research on this, and it's basically a guy saying that he spoke to somebody who saw the evidence. So it's like second or third hand under oath. I mean, okay, fine, but it's just not much better than Eric CIA Aramella as Adam Schiff's whistleblower. I overheard somebody talking about the call they overheard. I mean, Hesher, UFOs. What do you think?
Fake. Sorry, this is all fake. This is all propaganda.
You're rubbing Mr. Valentine up the wrong way on this. We'll give Basil a chance for rebuttal, but go ahead, Asher.
I think there probably are legitimate events, perhaps, but at this point, I trust none of this stuff, especially the guy you're referencing. Ridiculous. This has been done so many times, and if you look at the they've got this Skinwalker Ranch show that I've talked about a couple of times. That this is being pushed on the public to distract us and to set us up for the eventual, if they ever decide to pull the ripcord on this one, Project Blue Beam, Project God Voice, the thing that Reagan warned about. At this point, they have hidden so much technology from us that it's virtually impossible to tell something that is non-terrestrial technology from something that is non-public technology. And I just think it's odd. I even go before, one of the other big events of 23 was the realignment of Fox and CNN to include Tucker being ousted. But before he was ousted this year, he kept running those stories. Like, he was in on those stories. And I was just like, what are you doing here, Tucker? I mean, this isn't an episode of the Joe Rogan show. So, show me the space, brother, and I'll show you a government modified dude man thing homunculus, perhaps.
Basil, Operation Bluebeam, Blue Book versus real. What do you think?
Well, the significant thing was that in two countries, in Mexico and in the United States, for the first time ever, there were hearings attended by elected officials where the subject of non-human life forms was seriously discussed. Now, that's never happened before. Previously, it was a totally, off-the-wall, tinfoil hat subject. Now it's moved a lot nearer to mainstream discourse. The bill that was eventually passed requiring disclosure has been watered down to be virtually meaningless, I believe. But, the witness, the main one speaking in the committee, he's only he's one person that's come forward. I mean, I'm surprised if the United States Congress wants to do a proper investigation into, and it's only a very narrow area, really, the whole recovered craft aspect. They start with one of their own former employees, sadly no longer with us, Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso, who some 20 or so years ago, before he died, published this extraordinary book, The Day After Roswell, in which he details how he was intimately involved in the back engineering of various bits of technology, including transistors and microwaves, from the recovered craft at Roswell. Now, Philip Corso existed, and he was a lieutenant colonel in the army, and there's all his testimony and photographs are there. So he was either making it up or it's completely true. Why would he have made it all up? So, but that's, of course, ignored because the whole UFO question is so heavily compartmentalized. Everything is looked at in isolation, including Project Bluebeam and all the other, hologram technologies. Hesher is absolutely right. The US military have technology decades in advance of what the public are aware of, and that stretches as far as the so-called secret space program, which says that we've already got bases on Mars and dotted halfway across the solar system and are in regular communication with all sorts of ET races. So you go from the sort of micro, are there actually crashed craft? Are there bodies, as their back engineered technology, right the way through to we've been negotiating with ETs for decades, as the former head of the Israeli space program said when he referenced Donald Trump wanting to reveal the alliance with the Galactic Federation. Remember, that came out a couple of years ago, and being told that humanity isn't ready yet for all that. So it's a very big, complex subject. But in terms of it took a giant stride towards the mainstream in 2023, and who knows where that's going to go in 2024. Suffice to say that a lot of low information people, like with the Israel-Palestine question, have chosen to educate themselves about it an awful lot more.
But honest straw poll opinion, this out of Mexico, is that a plaster cast, real, credible Basil Hesher, yay or nay?
Well, apparently scientists who examined it said it was biological material and that it contained DNA that they didn't recognize.
That thing,
it's not made of plaster.
Biological.
Yeah, that apparently, according to scientists who've examined it. I'm not a scientist. I haven't examined it. I've only seen that picture, and everything I've heard is second or third hand. But that's what I've been told.
Well, that's good enough for you to testify in front of Congress. Hesher, what do you think?
That is so fake. That is one of the fakest things I've ever seen. I remember when I was young, they had a a show. Gosh, it was on, I don't know, the VHF or UHF Rabbit Ears or something like that. Some of you will probably remember it, called Alien Autopsy. And they threw that thing around, and it was like sort of like War of the Worlds-y, you know, is it real? Is it not real? Well, it turns out it was totally fake. But this was in like the 80s or something, and that particular alien looked way more believable than this one. Yeah, no, I'm not signing on for that little ET prop there.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, it's dubious at best. It's dubious at best. So let me go back to my my 2023 top stories. I'll just run through these real quick. It's a little sort of sneak preview as to our tome, which is going to go up at 21 Wire. So those, I had to push the UFO thing into the honorable mention category, just for lack of substance, really. So we've got the Maui fire in there. That's pretty much dumb. I mean, that was unbelievable how much coverage that got, and certainly there were conflicting stories and whatnot. We talk about this. The as Basil said, the end of COVID. Definitely, the dragon of COVID was slayed in 2023. That's for sure, and the vaccine boosters basically collapsed. So that was, to me, interesting. Elon and the rise of X as a alternative free speech platform, certainly notable. Prigozhin, Trump's lawfare. I mean, that's from a U.S. point of view, that's a crazy, crazy saga that continues to unfold. The collapse of the Ukrainian project. Then, of course, October 7th. Those are a few of the things in our top 10 that we highlighted there. So that's what we're saying. Looking back and looking forward to 2024, that article will publish on New Year's Day, which will be on Monday, I think. Yeah, tomorrow, I guess. So we'll do the top 10 conspiracies today after the show, and then tomorrow we'll publish the predictions for 2024. My predictions, just generally following trend arcs. We've touched on some of those already, guys, but definitely a difference in the orientation of the Israeli issue as far as the West goes. That's a reality that the establishment's going to have to conform to. The other is some kind of a escape route on the Ukraine story with the Ukraine project. That's going to be an issue. Saving face for the U.S., for Europe as well. Shifting the focus, as we said. I talk about some of these things in my article, which will come out on New Year's Day. But definitely, I think BRICS has taken a bigger role. BRICS, the multipolar world is now coming into view, but it's not necessarily all good news, because with it comes a lot of instability. And if you look back at history, during these polar shifts in global power, there have been major catastrophes and world wars. So there is a level of instability that is inherent in this transition, which I think is problematic, to say the least. And with some of the crazies that we have in charge, including the people that are getting Basil deplatformed off X, like the heir apparent to Dick Cheney, who I think is even crazier than Dick Cheney, actually, Mike Pompeo, Nikki Haley's presumptive vice presidential pick. These are the people that want to see it all go up in flames and somehow be there at a safe enough distance to go and mop it up and sweep it up and make money doing that.
I mean, I hope we get a reordering of politics in 2024. We've been hoping for it for some time. People like Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo represent only a tiny, tiny proportion of the American public. They don't really represent anybody other than themselves and the people that fund them. So, are we going to see another populist candidate? All three of the top tier candidates, if you could include Bobby Kennedy, are all avowed Zionists. You've only got Cornel West and Jill Stein who stand outside that of the candidates we're looking at for 2024. But American politics has been a complete disaster area for several decades, and it would be nice if something different happened in 2024, but I can't really see it. What about Biden? Is he going to make it, Patrick? What's your prediction? Is he going to make it to November, or does he
Ooh,
collapse
no,
in February?
I've mapped this out ad nauseum. Okay, Biden will just be there during the primaries, and he doesn't even need to show up. And the Democrats have basically kiboshed any challengers anyway. So the Democratic primaries are just a formality. Biden doesn't need to campaign. Then he will be. I think the sick note will be pulled, probably in May, something like this. Then there'll be a quick switch, which will be Kamala temporarily sworn in as president, vice president appointed, has to be voted on by Congress, simple majority. Basil, sorry, yeah, you want to be.
Yeah, I was looking up the odds there, Patrick. For
Oh,
the
you're looking at the odds.
Yeah, it's a long time since we did any betting on the U.S. presidential election.
Okay, well, if you're looking at the odds, because I was going to go to you, but I thought you were busy. But I'll go back to you on the odds. I'll go back to you on the odds.
Yeah.
So it'll be bring in Gavin Newsom as vice president, have the public be able to get a look at him before the Democratic convention in August, and that's when they pulled the switcheroo on the floor. And so it'll be Newsom. So I think they're going to preempt the exit of Biden before the convention, just to get the public acclimatized to some new faces. And he'll probably pick another vice president. It's not going to be Kamala. And she'll say that she's going to step down and something like that. So there's going to be some kind of a changing of the guard on that. So it's going to happen. So the primaries are just a formality. It's doesn't matter. He's old and frail and definitely not even compos mentis, even by Democratic standards. And that's saying something. So,
well, I've got some terrible news here, Patrick.
On
the betting front, Donald Trump is the 11-8 favorite to be the next president, 11-8 against. So he's given a slightly less than 50% chance, 5-4 with some other firms. So Don's given sort of between a 40 and 45% chance. Joe Biden, you can get as big as 9-4. Stick down $4, win another $9. That's the biggest price he's ever been. But Nikki Haley is as short as 11-2 with one firm, 5.5-1, and no bigger than 9-1, which is a remarkably short price when you consider that she trails Trump by, a huge margin. So why is Nikki Haley surely the worst candidate ever? I mean, she came out the other day and said that the Palestinians should all go to a pro-Hamas country. Did you see that?
Yeah. She's basically
that was absolutely unbelievable stuff.
Ship them out, basically. So yeah, looking at the combined polling on that, I've got some results on that actually that we're looking at recently. But yeah, looking at the combined polling on Trump, it's a huge lead on Biden. I mean, in some of these swing states, that's combining sort of 8 to 10 polls on some of these. It's ridiculous. I'll give you an example here. Let's look at this on the results on this. So I mean, it's Michigan and some of these other states like that. It's not even close. So here's the results on the polling. This is recent. Michigan, Biden and Trump. This is a combination of 18 polls. 18 polls has Trump up 46-39. That's a landslide blowout in Michigan. Okay. Yeah. That's a combination of 18 polls. Here we go. Georgia, another key swing state. Trump 45.9, Biden 39.8. So, and then going on here to Nevada, another key swing state. Trump 47.3, Biden 42.7. Thank you, our friend Gadsden on X. Appreciate your research there, M. Gadsden, 1776 on X Twitter. So the margins are crazy. The question is, how does Haley poll against Biden? And there are moves afoot to keep Trump off the ballot. So, very
serious moves. just to go back to the Democrats, Biden is your 4-1 on favorite, 3-1 on in other places. So you've got to stick $3 down to win another one to be the nominee. Second in is Newsom, best price 15-2, 7.5 to 1. Third in, Michelle Obama. We talked about her as the candidate months ago, if you remember. She was a much bigger price. She's ahead of Kamala Harris with most firms. She's as short as 6 to 1 to be the Democratic nominee with Betway, but you can get 16 to 1 with Star Sports. And everybody else virtually nowhere. Your old favorite Hillary Clinton, 100 to 1 with the William Hill organization, if you think she's going to be the candidate, let alone win it. So it's odds on still, Joe, but a very weak odds on. Not a lot of confidence. Republican candidate, Donald is 6 to 1 on, with Nikki Haley second in at around 7 to 1, 6 or 7 to 1. Ron DeSantis 25 to 1, Vivek 50 to 1, and the rest nowhere.
Oh, so Vivek not making any major.
No, but he came out in support of Trump, didn't he? He's looking for that VP pick.
Yeah, don't know if he's going to get that, but is Haley looking for the VP pick? Has she come out and slagged off Trump directly? She hasn't, has she?
Yes, she has.
She has. Okay.
Yes.
So that rules her out. But there's still the horse trading thing. If Donald's going to get it, they could say, Donald, we're going to let you through. But you see Big Mike over there, Big Mike P? Yeah, that's your VP, Donald. Yeah? That's the deal. You want in, you got to have Caesar as your VP. And we're going to go to war with Iran.
Yep.
Give you your second term. But, World War III, that's the cost. Pompeo is your guy. And by the way,
Nikki Haley is Secretary of State.
And you'll be looking over your shoulder, Donald.
Can you imagine that, Patrick?
With, LBJ breathing down your collar. So
can you imagine that? Yeah. Trump number 1, Pompeo VP, Nikki Haley Secretary of State.
I know. I would not give. Show. I would give Nikki Haley Pete Buttigieg's job, which is transport secretary. That's definitely out of the way. Can't do too much damage there, aside from a few train wrecks. So that's where I would stick her.
Pictures circulated on X I saw today of her as a child with her family, a very obviously Indian from the subcontinent family. And yet in 2001, she listed her race as being white. What's the matter with her?
I don't know. She's not proud of the heritage.
Not proud of the heritage.
No, but she could have got extra diversity, equity, and inclusion points. She forego that. For what? Who knows? She's a very strange one. She changed her name as well. So there's a little bit of Hollywood going on there. But don't they all change their names in politics? That's just the way it goes these days. So, guys, 2024, interesting, scary.
Yes.
That's, for me, interesting, scary, unpredictable.
Buckle up.
3 words, Basil, to describe 2024. Basil.
Well, do you mean for me personally or for the world as a whole?
Yeah, the world
for
as a
me
whole.
Personally, it's going to be hugely profitable and joyous and creative.
Okay.
For the world as a whole, it's going to be challenging. It's going to be risky, but let's hope it's going to be peaceful.
That's good. Think positive. Positive affirmations. Hesher, 3 words to describe 2024.
Fentanyl deaths exceeding 100,000.
Fentanyl deaths exceed how many?
100,000. That's my prediction for this next year. We're going to see another more than 100,000 Americans die from fentanyl poisoning, as our government is complicit in that, in leaving that border open. So to me, I just can't fathom this. I cannot fathom this. We started the war on terror. If we go from their story, we started the war on terror over 3,000 people that were killed, 3,000 Americans that were killed. We've lost 100,000 this year, more than 100,000, and we're on track to lose more than 100,000 next year. Now, not to, take the spotlight away from other places where these things are happening too, but this is somewhat unique what we're experiencing here. a government in and of itself that has opened its borders, not just its southern border, all of its borders, northern border, seaports, airports, to people from over 172 countries. And and these aren't all, when I talk about these deaths, I think everybody knows this, but they're not all drug addicts. They're not all people that are destitute and, making bad decisions in their lives. Sometimes it's kids who are just trying to, do what they see on television and order some Ambien or some, I don't know, Adderall or something like that. They do it on a social media platform. They get a pill. It's counterfeit. It's got this stuff in it. They die. This happens all the time. Babies crawl over it. Cops touch it and die.
Yep. It's hugely lethal in very small doses. Very dangerous. I agree with you, Hesher. This is a serious crisis, and the fact that it's being allowed to get to the point where it is speaks volumes about where the minds are of our congressmen, senators, and our White House are, and completely out to lunch on this issue. But it's not just that being out to lunch. The cartels themselves have said, by overwhelming the points of entry, that they're able to move product in other parts of the border. Okay, so there are people benefiting from this. There's human trafficking, drugs, all benefit from the open border policy. And I'm going to call out the Democratic Party because they themselves have made statements to this effect, that they're going to turn these red states blue, like Texas and so forth. They're not they haven't been shy. Even Biden himself made such a statement on record not so long ago about doing this exact thing. So that's a policy. So there's a political motivation. Then there's the organized crime benefit. So my question is, and I'll leave it with a even bigger black pill to swallow than what Hesher just served up, which was pretty dark. Is there some sort of a confluence between these organized criminal cartels and our political leaders of a certain description? Is there possibility that there's some kind of relationship there, as there has been in the past with prohibition and other times in history? That is a legitimate question. And Carrie Lake, who was railroaded out of the governorship in Arizona, she brought up this very question. And I think she knows something. And I think that is a problem. And I'm looking at who's serving on all these committees for immigration and border security. And there's some of the same people that sat on all the warmongering defense procurement committees in the previous years. And I'm seeing a terrible pattern emerging, that you have these gatekeepers in Washington that are, and not just allowing these things to happen, they're like actively enabling these things to happen. And that to me is a problem. So if we're looking for solutions, I think there's some solutions that can happen in Washington that could definitely change the course on some of these issues, with a change of leadership and a cleaning of house on some of these areas. It has to happen. It's so far out of whack, as Hesher said. It's like completely out of alignment now. It's ridiculous. Shouldn't be. It's getting to the point where it's going to be very hard to correct without going full fascist. And, do we want that? Well, it has happened in history, which is a major course correction that's extremely not just uncomfortable, but oppressive. Is that the plan, to allow things to get so out of control that the state can come in and make a bigger hammer and crush everybody in the process of restoring order? Is that the best outcome? Historically, I would say probably not. I'd rather kill the dragon when it's a baby dragon than to let it get out of control as it has now. So, but hey, who are we? We're just a couple of hacks. What do we know?
Yeah.
100,000 is a cull of the population, isn't it? That's, getting into cull territory.
Yes.
Yeah, serious numbers. that plus everything else you can add to the various other casualties in that
like
category.
sudden adult death syndrome, which is just exploding, and I'm not going to go too far into that.
Oh,
I don't mean to be dark here, but
of the myocarditis variety.
yeah, we've got that going, and you guys talked about the end of all that, and there is an effective in the zeitgeist end to that, but let's not forget that the IMF and the moneyed sources that paid for all of that, the color of the money that they printed was of 5-year contracts. So that means there's still plenty of money for this stuff. That's why you're seeing Swifty and all, football people and all these people saying, go out and, get the jib jab. And that money expires in 25, I believe. So
The
when
money's still funded.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually this kind of thing is annual buckets of money, maybe 2-year buckets of money. It's absurd to see an initiative like this globally, internationally, given 5-year buckets of money to pull from. So there is still the concern, rightfully, that over, by the time 2025 hits, it's going to be time to say, hey, we need another batch of that money. And if that's going to happen, there's going to have to be another catalyzing event in that swim lane, in the pandemic swim lane. And then if another 5-year batch of money gets dropped on the international community to everywhere that it did go for all the things that it did do over the last 3.5, 4 years now, almost, we can expect to see some more events in this area, I would say. But what does that mean with the public the way that it is? Going back to what you guys were saying, what does that actually look like? Because if this were to happen again, I think they would need to have much more than just a strong propaganda push. I think there'd have to be something more visceral. That's concerning also.
Yeah, like an alien virus or an alien.
Non-human biologics was the term that was birthed from that meeting.
That's right.
Imagine that. A variant from Mars. Ooh. We've got a vaccine for that. It's going to be risky, but you might as well take it. You don't want to die. You don't want to die a painful alien death. That would be terrible, wouldn't it? We've all seen the films with the little, alien. So yeah, interesting. Well, let's just take it into full black pill territory, guys. No, look, we're gonna wrap up the show. I want to give a big shout out and just thank you, Hesher, thank you, Basil, for all you guys have done in the last 12 months to spread, high quality information and analysis to your audiences, be it here at the Sunday Wire, on ACR with the Boiler Room, Hesher and your team there, also at TNT Network, TNT Radio. Collectively, yourselves, many others I can throw in there as well. You've done amazing in raising awareness on a lot of issues. So we got a lot of work to do in 2024. That's for sure.
We certainly do.
It's probably more work than before. It's going to be harder than ever, but we learned a thing or two, and hopefully we can connect the dots for everybody that's watching these programs, listening to our streams in the next 12 months. We'll do our best, and you'll get an honest take from us, and we will do our due diligence. You can be sure of that. That's one thing I know about this crew. They do their due diligence on pretty much everything. So you're going to get a good, straight, honest, even-handed take on everything. And if we have to pull the alarm, we will pull the alarm. So be it. But you guys, awesome. I'm going to give some housekeeping shout outs here for our winter fundraising drive. But before we do that, housekeeping for Hesher. What do you want to give a shout out to in terms of where you're at, what you're doing?
All right. Well, find me at alternatecurrentradio.com. Of course, Spore and I host the Boiler Room over there Thursday nights. If you're missing any boiler rooms, you can find them at Rockfin. Rockfin.com is where all our video streams are. So there is not a single boiler room from the last, 2 years-ish that's not there. So Rockfin's the great place. Our website needs a little bit of work. Some of the episodes aren't up there. Things have become very, very high speed around here. So a lot of the attention to detail I used to put into post-production is sitting on the wayside here because we're just moving so fast. We're making so much content. So Rockfin is where all those live streams are. Much like you, Patrick, we're working on our Rumble. May need to talk to a professional about that one, having some issues each week when I try to light that up. But we're doing our best to get uploaded to Rumble. And yeah, we got great plans for 2024. If the work and news cycles and broadcast cycles will allow it, we're going to be doing some development over here at ACR, kind of picking up that trajectory we were on before Ruckus and I started working over at TNT, which has been amazing. And a big shout out to the TNT crew, you know, all the other hosts over there, and
all of them.
Well, yeah, sure. You know, what the heck? We'll be family
generous.
Because and I know what you're thinking there, Basil, but the fact that TNT has not told people how to talk and how to analyze and how
I agree. I agree.
It's quite remarkable. And the fact that most of us have been able to be cordial with each other in a time that's very divisive has been outstanding to me. You know, that's something that we've had a hard time finding in alternative media. So, you know, my hat is definitely off to TNT and everybody over there, even the people I may not agree with on certain things. And yeah, more Boiler Room, more State of the Nation. Find me on State of the Nation with Steve Hook Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time. Thursdays here for Boiler Room. Sundays right here for Sunday Wire every week. If you don't see me or hear me, I'm still here. I'm sitting back here making sure the audio happens properly and all that good stuff. So thanks for having me, Patrick. Congratulations to you, by the way. Also, you know, having you back on Twitter has been great, and the Monday to Friday work you're doing at TNT is stellar. And Basil, you as well, just great work this year. Same to all our colleagues out there with TNT and ACR, as I said, and very much looking forward to 2024, regardless of what it brings, because it's going to bring some great conversations, some great analysis, and probably great drama.
Yep. So we'll be doing some journalism as well. Again, Basil, thanks for everything you do. You'll be able to find Basil at the usual venues here on the Sunday Wire, also on TNT during the week. He does pop in regularly to offer his analysis and great insight.
On tomorrow morning, UK time.
Indeed.
I'm making a contribution to Locked and Loaded with Rick Munn.
That one of my favorite hosts on that network, Rick. Yep. Amazing, great broadcaster, Rick Munn from Northern Ireland. Absolute Spartan,
great guy.
A host, great guy.
A rocker too.
Yeah, he is. He's a rocker. He's in your genre. He's in your lane, the metal lane. I heard we had Masters of Puppets came on the extended version. We were going for a hike the other morning. Came on the car stereo before we pulled up, and I was like, oh my God, that was once a very subversive song back in the day. You remember?
Yeah.
Back when that came out, that was really put me in a time warp. Metallica. But yeah, thanks you guys. And well, look, we're going to transition here. I just want to give a shout out to our winter fundraising drive here at 21st Century Wire. You guys have probably seen the notifications for this as well. It's already begun. There's a little progress dial. We set a very ambitious target this winter, and we got a month and a bit to meet it. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, but we need your help. So if you like what we do on this platform, 21stcenturywire.com, the Sunday Wire show, plus the journalism that we do during the week. We commissioned some amazing articles. We've got some also other writers on board. Done some great pieces. There's a great piece by Julian Rose from the UK on the New Year's, how to reimagine society in the future, a better society. It's pieces like this and the work that we do. We curate interviews that we do on other platforms. We put that content out as well. We've got great archives of material on a number of international arenas. We try to present that in a way that people can search it, can find the information they want. It's a research tool. We're going to do a whole lot more in 2024, and we have a lot to do in terms of back-end engineering on the site, servers, security, everything else, plus the content that's coming as well. So if you like what we do, you want to support us, now is a good time. This is our annual drive. This is where we raise the money to do everything for the next year, the winter fundraising drive. You can find us on 21stcenturywire.com. You can find our links there as well. And you can different ways that you can support us. You can support us ideally by taking out a membership at 21wire.tv. That's our members site. There's special content on there, plus a 24/7 documentary stream channel, which we run there as well. That's a nice little perk. There's other perks coming there for members, but that's just a way to support us. It's not expensive. You can donate. You can also support us through our affiliate sponsors, New Dawn Magazine. You can also support us with our other affiliates as well, like our VPN Surfshark, but also Clive DeCarl. Clive DeCarl for health supplements has a great product line. So Clive's been amazing. So you can support us. It's a win-win. You get a great product. You support our network, and everything works out for everybody in the end. So we appreciate all you guys who've donated, either shopped through our links with our affiliates at 21st Century Wire, or have taken out a subscription for our monthly membership as well. So, and you guys, we're going to need a lot of help to make it happen. And I'm in touch with some people on the back line that are coming through with some big donations. And you guys, I appreciate, you know who you are. You guys are amazing. We couldn't do it without you. Some of you have been there for us in previous years as well. You've really come in on the clutch to help us out. So this is what it takes. We are independent. We are in it for the long haul. Been going since December 2009. This platform has been building. So everything that we built and sustained since then. So we will be here for the long haul. And, you know, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. That's what it feels like right now. And yeah, so you know what we're like. You know how we handle the geopolitical issues of the day, what our journalism is like, who our team is, this type of work they do, the type of contributors we have. And let's keep doing it. We're going to keep building it, making it better and better going forward. We need your help to do that. So get on to the winter fundraising drive here at 21stcenturywire.com. It'll be links you can see along the bottom here. And just go to our website. There's a donate button as well. You'll see winter fundraising banners that will be at the bottom of every article for the next month. We'll be pushing that pretty heavily as well. Plus, we'll be sending stuff out by email. All these different ways you can support us. So thanks very much. Those of you who've done that already, amazing. Every single penny is helpful, and we will use it to the max. But listen, we couldn't do it without you guys. So from here, I want to say thank you to Hesher. Thank you to Basil Valentine. You guys, amazing. Appreciate you guys as well for joining us for this special New Year's edition. Wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, I hope that you have a good start to the new year in 2024. I've got plans to do something very early in the morning, which involves hiking up a steep incline and getting really off to a good start for 2024 with people that I know, love, and care about. That's what we're doing to start off the new year. Get started on a high, folks. Get started with something healthy. Get ready. It's going to be a challenging 2024. So you need to be fit, both mentally, spiritually, and physically. All three of those things. So whatever you're thinking about doing for your resolutions, make sure you hit all of those three. Mentally, spiritually, and physically. You need to be there and right in all those areas to make a positive impact in the world for yourself, for the people around you. So good luck with this challenge. And yeah, we'll see you guys in not very long. We will reconvene. We'll reconvene very shortly. So I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. We are signing out here at the Sunday Wire. It's been real. Thank you.